So today we're looking at the ECX AMP Crush. It's another two-wheel drive. Basically the same thing as our ECX AMP MTs. But today we're taking the Crush and we're going to put in a GoolRC brushless motor and ESC. First thing I had to do was remove the stock 20-turn brushed motor. I had to remove the combined ESC receiver, which also meant our stock transmitter is no longer usable. So we pulled our components out so we could install our brushless. So to change out the motor, first thing we got to do is take off the rear wheel on the right side. So passenger side, rear tire. Now our rear tire is off, which gives us access to this area. So to get our gear cover off, there are 3 screws. One here, and this one up here. These 2 you don't need to worry about. We're just gonna unscrew these 3. All the ECX AMP vehicles, the AMP MT, AMP DB, AMP Crush, are all set up the same way. All of our screws are removed. We're just gonna grab this, pull this off. Now we have access to our spur gear, our slipper clutch. This nut here has a spring that pushes on this plate. You can adjust your slipper clutch tension by loosening or tightening this nut. I have a separate video that explains that. Obviously this is your pinion gear that's attached to the motor shaft, but to get the motor out, it's just these 2 screws. So all you gotta do is loosen these. This is a fixed hole, and then this one is actually a slotted channel, which lets you adjust your gear mesh. I believe in the same video where we talk about the slipper clutch adjustments, we also talk about setting your gear mesh. What you want is, or if you hold your pinion gear and move your spur gear, you get a little bit of wiggle. So that's all there is to it to get your motor out. Take off the wheel, take off your gear cover, take off these 2 screws, motor drops right out the back, and then you can put the new one in. Just don't forget to take your spur gear off of your existing motor and mount it to your new motor. It's nothing more than a set screw. As long as your spur gear and your pinion gear, the teeth mesh and are pretty well lined up, then get that pinion gear mounted in whichever direction it needs to go in, as long as you have enough screw threads to get that onto the motor shaft. The brushless motor is a 3650. It fit right in. It's got the same shaft diameter as the brushed motor, same length shaft as the brushed motor. So when we pulled the brushed motor out, all I had to do was reattach the pinion gear to the brushless motor, and it just screwed right back into place. So then it was a matter of figuring out where to put the ESC, the switch, and the new receiver. In the package with the ESC and the motor, I got a bag that had some mounting screws for the motor, which I didn't need to use because the screws that were holding the motor in place already fit just fine. It also has some battery straps, which these are really long, so I had to use a shorter battery strap. Because with the LiPo battery, this doesn't work. The LiPo battery is just too big, at least the ones we have, so you can't put this on and hold it down. So now we have to use a battery strap to hold the battery in, which there's already cutouts in the body for that, so it's not an issue. All we have is this little spot here between the shock tower and the battery tray. So the ESC is just with some double stick tape held in place on this little platform. The on-off switch is right over here on this side, stuck to the platform. And then in the little bit of space that was left, I mounted the Spectrum SRX 200 receiver, which works with the STX2 transmitter. This is one I had from one of the boats that I didn't need to use anymore. So here's just another view from the top a little bit. You can see, again, there's not much of a little platform here, but the receiver is mounted to it, the ESC is mounted to it, and then the on-off switch. That was just some creative running of the wires for the motor, and then the antenna I had an extra piece of antenna tube, so I just ran that antenna wire down, ran it underneath this little piece of silicone tubing that holds the servo wire in place in this little channel, and then just kind of stuffed this in there so that's kind of basically held in place. So that is our upgraded ECX AMP Crush.